Knife, that's a knife.
G'day and kia ora, this is the Anzac Gamer, also known as Angelite85, and welcome back to the Anzac Gaming channels. This video is going to be about basically when anybody talks about PC gaming and the exclusives, this particular thing is mentioned as a counter to it. And it is about indie games. They talk about, they say, you know, we get people like Mr. YouTube Gamer and JTech TV and John Kill 3D talking about how consoles have better exclusives. Well, funnily enough, guys, better exclusives is a subjective term. What you may like, I may not, and many other people may not like and may not want. Just because other people do doesn't necessarily mean that the exclusives are objectively better than what's on PC. It's just a matter of preference at the end of the day, guys. It's subjective. Anyway, the rebuttal to this is, oh yeah, we, as in PC gamers, turn around and go, yeah, well, if you're going to talk about exclusives, we have more. We have more choice on our exclusives, ranging across many different genres that are exclusively only on PC. So, real-time strategies, turn-based strategies, what was the other one? MOBAs, certain MMORPGs, games like that. You know, certain genres are exclusive to PC. But then the rebuttal to the comeback on that, oh yeah, but all those games are indie games. And they talk about the indie game and the way they say it as being one of inferior and lesser quality to quote-unquote AAA and AA titles. Well, the reason that I am doing this video is because of this particular quote here by Mr. YouTube Gamer.
PCs have more exclusive games, PCs have more games, but we all know that console exclusive games are better games than PC exclusives. Let's look at all these shitty indie games that keep coming out on PC. Whoa, PC has more games.
I know, right? Now, I saw this particular one in a video done by Top Hats and Champagne, and basically, we will say I'm triggered by it. Because at the end of the day, some of these AAA games, well, a lot of these AAA games, would love to be as good as the indie games. Which I will mention straight away, a little bit of history. There is a particular indie title that is one of the world's biggest games that we have seen in terms of just sheer copies moved since release. And it is remaining still one of the most popular games played today. I, of course, speak of Minecraft. It is an indie game. It has shifted 25 million copies just on PC alone. This is including Apple people. Apple computers are a PC. Stop saying PC versus Mac. A Mac is still a PC, for fuck's sake. But over the entirety of the platform, so iOS, Android, consoles, and the four different ones, PlayStation 3, actually even the Wii U, PlayStation 3, 360, PS4, Xbox One, as I said before, Wii U, it has shifted over 100 million copies. That's insane. It's outsold many games. Many games. Many AAA games. Some AAA games that have been heralded as amongst the best games ever made. It has outsold them, and it's an indie game. Indie. It's an indie. It may not be classed that now because it's under Microsoft, but it is it was an indie game. We now have another game that has done better than AAA games is Stardew Valley. It outsold Mafia 3 on Steam. And it's a one-person operation. One-person title. Yeah. One person outsold a AAA title on Steam, being Mafia 3. It's also apparently outsold Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. Yeah. Yeah. Suck on that. There is another game that is actually due for release, and I would put it up against AAA's. I'd have it go up against AAA's toe-to-toe. and that is Subnautica. It's an indie game. We also have games like Undertale, Kerbal Space Program, Grey Goo, which is a real-time strategy, World of Goo for a very old title, Papers, Please, The Binding of Isaac Rebirth, Abzu, Prison Architect, To the Moon, and Rust. We have games like DayZ. That was actually an independent mod for another game, which was Arma 2. We have... There are, for every... Yes, I will say this. For every good, great indie game that is produced, there are probably 2 or 3 bad ones. But you know what? Those bad ones get separated out. We are able to separate the cream from the chaff. We can get rid of the shit. We can separate they get the ones that are any good end up actually going to consoles, to be quite honest. They initially may start out on PC, but they get a PC port, not a PC port, a console port later on. Subnautica is one of them. And the reason that the developers will develop on PC first is because it's an easier to access market than it is for the consoles. I mean, hell, Ark is going to PlayStation 4. Ark. That's an indie title. And it has been ported over to the PlayStation 4. So where's your disdain for indies then? Where is your disdain for indie titles when they go to a console? Hell, there is actually a very famous indie game. Very famous. I believe we all know it as No Man's Sky. A game that was essentially in the end would be considered a failure, but it shifted a lot of copies. But it's a good example of a bad indie game. So, where's your let me, I've got, at the end of the day, one of the things, there is actually, I'm going to leave the link to a video done by Bullet Barry when he's talking about the, PCs have no AAA developers. They're all the AAA developers are on console. Well, I'm going to leave, that's a stupid quote for starters. But I'll link the video down below where Bullet Barry talks about that being a really dumb thing to say. But yeah, at the end of the day, stop thinking of indie games as being bad. Let me put it down to you. Let me break it down for you. We have not only indie games, we have indie music, and we have indie movies. Right? There is bad in them too. There are bad indie not games, obviously I'm talking about indie games, but there is bad indie music and there is bad indie movies. I mean, in all honesty, one of the worst indie movies I've seen recently, but has generated a cult following, is bloody Sharknado. I mean, really? That, I saw the first one and I just went, what the hell did I just watch? Shame. Anyway, there is bad indie in... There's bad in everything. There are bad movies even in Hollywood. So the great A-listed movies, A-grade movies. There are bad A-grade movies. There are bad musicians, independent musicians that you just think, hey, maybe you should chuck it in. You're not, shouldn't think. And there are bad indie games. There are bad indie developers, namely things like Digital Homicide. But we don't talk about that. So, there's bad in everything, but at the end of the day, do not generalize an entire section of game development with the same brush because of a few of bad eggs. There are some great indie titles out there. There are some indie games out there that, as I said, I'd put up against AAAs. And you know why those games are great? It's because those indie developers push gaming. They try hard, and they try and do something different because they're not scared. They may not have the funds to back them, which is even funnier because by rights, the section of gaming that the developers that should be doing it are your Activisions, which are your publishers. But, you know, the publishers should be pushing it. The Activisions, the EAs, you know, should be pushing the boundaries of gaming because they have the funds there. They should. There is no reason why they shouldn't, but they rather play it safe rather than try and push the boundaries of gaming and push hard. Hence why a lot of VR titles are done by independents, done by indie game developers. They're not being done by AAAs. Admittedly, we've just had Resident Evil 7. That is a VR compatible title. We've got another coming out by Ubisoft, or being published by Ubisoft, which is Star Trek Bridge Crew, which is another VR title. But at the end of the day, if the problem that we have is that the AAA developers and the AAA publishers aren't seeming to push VR because they are scared of it. They think it's going to be a commercial failure. But the little thing here is, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We need the AAA developers to develop the must-have titles for VR to drive VR sales. But the AAA developers won't develop for VR because the VR sales aren't that crash hot. But the VR needs the AAA titles to push those sales. There needs to be, and it's a bit of a dirty word, or a dirty sentence to be actually saying, we need to see VR exclusive titles. Exclusives are bad, yes. But when we have an infant technology like VR, technology that needs to be pushed, really put into the hands of the consumer and have a nice big kind of test base, as it were, to really drive the technology, to really drive improvements within the technology, to really push it. We need those AAA titles to come through and be exclusive to VR to make people more inclined to buy the VR equipment. Be it the Rift, be it the HTC Vive, be it even the PlayStation VR, be it the Microsoft VR headset once it hits, be it the open source VR setup, it needs to all be coming through. We need the AAA developers to be pushing and making a real hard, solid go of it, a real hard crack at VR. Because without the AAA developers, it's going to be a slow ramping up on VR. VR is, I've played it. I've had a go with it with the DK2. And I tell you what, it's not for everyone, I'm going to admit, it's not for everyone, but holy hell, is it really a future direction for gaming. Really is. And I cannot wait to see it actually take off. I mean, hell, this year I am planning on doing a major build, new PC build, just basically because my system, I'm asking too much of it now. With all these videos and streaming, I'm asking too much of my system. So I need to get a brand new one with a brand new strong, like bull CPU and a decent GPU in it, and I'll be putting money into getting a HTC Vive. So I'm going down the Steam VR route. Just basically because but yeah. So in conclusion, people, stop saying indie games with such disdain. Indie games are fantastic. They're doing things that the AAA developers just seem to be too scared to do. Too scared to push the boundaries on. Too scared to just want to play it safe. And that is sad. That is really sad. And, AAA guys have got the money and the funds to really push gaming if they so wanted. But at the end of the day, they'd rather play it safe. They'd rather, at the end of the day, as far as I'm concerned, cater to the lowest common denominator within the gaming technology spectrum, which is consoles. I am actually kind of hoping that with the increased power of the PlayStation 4 Pro and the Xbox Scorpio when it comes through, that they may push a lot harder. But having said that, both consoles are limited by their CPUs, which are weak source. Absolutely weak source. They just restrict the GPUs in them, something chronic. But anyway, that's a topic for another day. I've been the Anzac Gamer, also known as Angelite85. Now, I said I wouldn't be doing this, but don't forget to like, comment, share, follow, upvote, all that sort of stuff. And I will see all of you in the next video. Bye for now.